Good morning.
Hello everyone, it's your hostess with the mostest, DevoSD, with another episode of the Steam Backlog, where I try out every game in my Steam library to see if they are worthy to play again or not. Today, we will be diving into the horror series Amnesia, which put me into a small crossroads given the games don't line up alphabetically compared to their release dates, so I will switch the order chronologically to see how each game progresses as the years went on. I do know this will come up again, so I will do this again when needed. Now with that out of the way, let's get right into it. Amnesia: The Dark Descent released on September 8th of 2010, developed and published by Frictional Games. It was a game that I very much associate with YouTubers like PewDiePie and other Let's Players from back in the day that played the hell out of this game when it first launched and helped propel not just themselves, but the game into notoriety. Dark Descent, out of the three Amnesia games I played, is rated the highest out of them all. For me personally, I'm not a horror fan. I'm more of a fast-paced or tactical FPS shooter kind of guy, so if a horror game wants to keep me coming back, it really needs to do something special. Just last episode I rated Alien Isolation a 5 out of 10 because the atmosphere was really good, I love sci-fi, and I think xenomorphs are the coolest alien design bar none. But even with all that going on for it, I don't care for walking sims and hiding all day. So what do I find special about the Dark Descent? Well, funny enough, Frictional Games just added mod support on Steam about a month ago from when I started making this video, which is always welcomed. Otherwise, I did really like the story of the game, the backstory in particular. You can learn about the history of the castle that you are in by finding written pages that are laying around everywhere that talks about a crazed baron and a man he hired named Wilhelm, and how the baron had him do all these mischievous deeds, and how he wound up backstabbed and poisoned, resulting in his death by the man that hired him. It was a neat little read, but besides that, I found more mechanics annoying than anything. Two things in particular. The first being the effects from what I presume was your character's amnesia that he suffers from. I don't know who at Frictional Games thought it was a good idea to straight up blur your vision and tilt the camera sideways when you're trying to walk around doing specific story elements, because it legit was fucking with my eyes a little bit to where if I wasn't making this video, then I would have just dropped the game immediately. And my second gripe is with the background music, if you want to call it that. It's not like a Resident Evil director's cut bad. But the background noise is just really repetitive and annoying after you played this for about an hour like I did. And because of that, this game is getting a fat 0 out of 10. It hurts rating this game so low because, again, my ratings aren't a display of how good or bad the game is, but on if I will ever go back to play the game again. It's still sad though when it comes to such a monumental game to the YouTube gaming community as a whole getting any kind of rating that isn't good. But I really have just no desire to ever play this again. So to Amnesia: The Dark Descent, I'm sorry, old friend, but this is goodbye. Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs, released on Steam in September 10th of 2013. It was developed by the Chinese Room and published by Frictional Games. This is the only Amnesia game that is not both developed and published by Frictional Games themselves. The Chinese Room you may know because they were the ones that made the Dark Ether and Everyone's Gone to the Rapture. Frictional Games opted to have outside help because they did not know how to continue the Amnesia series and feel that a misattempt would fail miserably. This led to the two teams working together, where the Chinese Room made the plot and the gameplay, and Frictional Games gave advice on the horror aspects while checking in every now and again to check for bugs, performance, gameplay flow, and other back-end work. According to Frictional Games co-founder Jens Nilsson, the team was so pleased to work with the Chinese Room and praised them for their high-quality art, level design, music, and in particular their writing. Sadly, the game only sits at a mixed rating on Steam currently, and this game is 10 years old right now, so this is most likely not going to change. When knowing what I know now researching this game, I can definitely see the influence from the Chinese Room. They dumbed down the mechanics from the Dark Descent and really did make this like their previous games. Which, for those of you who have never played their previous works, the Chinese Room is best known for making walking sims. I'd argue that they were the ones that made the genre popular to begin with. So in terms of going from Dark Descent to a machine for pigs, the inventory system was completely gutted, as well as the sanity system that would drain when you were in the dark. This left the game to have close to no mechanics. It was completely watered down to walking from point A to B, solve puzzles, and hide when needed. Knowing this makes sense on why people rated this somewhat poorly, because while Frictional Games might have said that A Machine for Pigs is more Amnesia than the original in their PR, which I still cannot fathom a sentence like that, clearly people didn't think the same way. Walking sims are somewhat of a niche genre, and if you don't like the story or atmosphere of the game, then you most likely would stop playing altogether, given that's all the game offers. I'm not a fan of walking sims, and this game is easily the biggest offender of the 3 Amnesia games I played, but this is a design choice, and the devs weren't doing this to just be lazy, because when you strip down game mechanics, it means the player's focus change to what the game does have, which, as Nilsson stated, was a few things, but specifically the writing, which I'd say was even better with its great voice acting. I did like this game more than Dark Descent, mainly because it didn't annoy me and give me a minor headache, which is odd given they do have the same weird distortion techniques when your character suffers from amnesia, so I will bump the score up to more like a 1 out of 10. I'd only really come back again because one of the Steam reviews said the game is 3 hours long, so I should be about a third of the way done, given I've played about an hour. Amnesia Rebirth released on Steam in October 20th of 2020, both developed and published by Frictional Games. When this game launched, it was 7 years since A Machine for Pigs, 10 years since Frictional Games actually developed anything Amnesia related themselves. Within that time, Frictional Games was hard at work with another game series called Soma, a sci-fi horror set under the waves of the Atlantic Ocean. The devs took everything they learned from making horror games from the past 10 years and put everything they had into Amnesia Rebirth. I felt that the story was at its absolute best in this rendition of Amnesia. The story follows the same trope given to it by the series title, where French explorer Tassie is suffering from amnesia caused by a plane crash. She wakes up and sets out on a journey to find her missing husband and fellow explorers while trying to survive the harsh desert conditions and dangerous spooky caves with whatever might lie within them.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Rebirth reverted changes done in A Machine for Pigs, where you once again have an inventory and sanity system back. Although the inventory system is essentially the same from what it once was, the sanity system is definitely way more of a profound mechanic from what the Dark Descent once had. You will hear Tassie's heart beat faster and faster and her breath heavier and heavier until she will start hearing whispers and seeing hallucinations if left in the dark for too long. Light sources are limited, so use light sparingly when in caves. Alternatively, when in the desert, the goal is opposite. Find the shade to stay out of the heat when exploring above ground. When playing the game, Tassie will discover portals that lead to an alien dimension, using a piece of unknown technology that is sported on Tassie's arm like a wristwatch. Something cool though that the game has is its difficulty setting, because it doesn't really have one. Instead, it says that you can choose between two game modes. Adventure, which takes away the horror of the game by removing the sanity system and monsters, but giving some extra puzzles to solve in return. Or Original Mode, that's meant to be the intended experience when playing. But this is a really nice change because it obviously opens people up that don't like horror to play the game as well. Also, this shows to me that the devs had a lot of confidence in the story of the game that they can strip the horror from the horror game and still feel like players can still get a good experience from Rebirth by just adding a couple more puzzles to pad out the game better. This game is definitely my favorite from the three, so I'll throw them a 3 out of 10. It's very well made and I can't praise it enough, but none of these games were really meant for me. I believe the only reason I had these games were from some kind of Humble Bundle deal that happened in the past. I'm happy I have them though, because I really do believe that Amnesia is a very important series, even though that it's not nearly as popular as its first outing. With that being said though, Frictional Games is still around and they just released a game last month called Amnesia the Bunker, which looks like it's heavily inspired by Resident Evil 7, so if you really like something more akin to survival horror, then maybe you should take a look at it. Otherwise, this is Devo SD, signing out. Gotta win, I can win it. Hold the band, gotta expect them, gotta expect them. Pull your balls out and tell me so.